From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. We start in Guatemala, where emergency services were forced to evacuate residents from areas surrounding the Fuego volcano after yet another eruption sent lava spewing down its south side. At least 72 people have lost their lives since the volcano first erupted on Sunday, with many others still missing. Authorities say more than 1.7 million people have been affected by the eruption, with over 3,200 people evacuated from the area following the initial eruption alone. People evacuated have found shelter in the Alotenango municipality, where volunteers and humanitarian organizations are providing assistance.
The Fuego volcano remains active. This is how it looks from Alotenango in the Zacatepeques department. Many troops of firemen continue rescue work and the search for victims.
Take off your shirts and helmets and clean the dust out of them. Everything that's on you is toxic. They have been working since the emergency started, despite having to wait for 24 hours before being allowed to work, due to protocols and security measures. They have stayed ready and have been ready to work.
Despite the thousands of victims, aid such as water, food, clothes, and mattresses continues to arrive. The Guatemalan people have shown great solidarity with those affected by this tragedy.
The hardest part comes after this, the emotional and psychological process to overcome this terrible situation, to overcome grief, sadness, and to restart their lives from scratch.
The dead were buried immediately, following the proper medical processes to avoid the spread of disease. Families of the victims talk of the terror they felt when the eruption happened.
It was terrible. We saw how everything was coming straight for us. We thought about our children. I sent them away first while I locked my house. We couldn't take anything with us.
Although regular activities are restarting in Alotenango, the emergency continues. The volcano continues to show its destructive power by spewing ashes and gas regularly.
Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza condemned a resolution passed by the Organization of American States, or OAS, that could have led to the country's suspension from the diplomatic body. The resolution was approved during a session of the OAS with only 19 votes in favor, 4 against, and 11 countries abstaining. The resolution required 24 votes to launch a process that could end in Venezuela's suspension. Arreaza said his people will solve any international difficulties without the OAS interference. The foreign minister added his country withdrew from the organization voluntarily since the OAS doesn't help the people of the Americas. He also called for the sanctions on Venezuela to be lifted and for its funds to be unlocked.
They have imposed more than 14 sanctions against Venezuela. Unblock Venezuela and lift the sanctions against the country so that Venezuela can come along using its own resources. That way we will be able to meet the needs of our people.
Ecuador's Foreign Minister María Fernanda Espinosa is the newly elected chair of the United Nations General Assembly. Espinosa will be the first woman from Latin America to chair the body, and she'll become the 4th woman ever to hold the presidency of the General Assembly in its more than 7 decades of existence. In an exclusive interview with Telesur, she discussed some of her future plans.
I would say that what the world needs is to solve so many complex issues, such as climate change, security crisis on an international level, as well as the challenge to fight poverty and inequality, or the challenge to create decent jobs for the new generation. All of these challenges should have a multilateral approach. The regional integration process is multilateralism. The United Nations are the privileged place. The UN General Assembly is the greatest parliament for humankind, where each country, each member state, has an equal seat. So the role of the President is to drive dialogue among the countries, and I am very honored to take this role.
Espinosa also spoke about the role of women and said she's committed to establishing gender equality as a priority in the UN General Assembly agenda.
My commitment is that within the agenda of the United Nations, women's issues appear as a transversal element as well as gender equality in every topic that we approach. Even if we talk about climate change, then the role of women is important, and also their special vulnerabilities. So my commitment is to approach equality and women's political and economical empowerment in all the topics the General Assembly deals with. That is a challenge, but I believe it is the right time to put these issues on the table.
Let's take a look at some details about the new president of the UN General Assembly. She was appointed as Foreign Minister of Ecuador under both presidents, Rafael Correa and the current one, Lenín Moreno. Espinosa also served as Defense Minister under President Correa. She was the permanent representative of Ecuador to the United Nations in Geneva until May 2017. And Espinosa holds a Doctor of Philosophy degree in Environmental Geography from Rutgers University. We're taking a short break, but join us again after this video from our multimedia team. Welcome back. The Argentinian Football Association has cancelled its planned friendly match with Israel after an intense campaign by pro-Palestinian groups calling for a peaceful boycott against Israel. Argentine newspapers, including Hola, Clarín and others, are reporting that the game has been cancelled and that the Israeli Football Association has been notified. Argentina's striker Gonzalo Higuaín told ESPN they've finally done the right thing. Argentina's Congress is preparing to debate an abortion bill on June 13 that would allow women to access free and safe procedures. Earlier we spoke to Gabriela Belén, a feminist activist from the organization Mala Junta Patria Grande, about the importance of this law and why women in the country are demanding lawmakers to pass it.
And also, this kind of things are happening not only in Buenos Aires, in the capital city of Argentina. This is happening all across Latin America, and that's why the feminist movement has a lot of pressure in getting to the representatives and getting a lot of laws that are part of our rights in the region, and because also we have like really dangerous contexts for women in our countries, also for the LGBT movement. So having the chance to be in the streets and claiming for our rights is like making a huge impact in the laws that we have and the rights that we are gaining.
In Peru, a demonstration against the government's economic policies ended with clashes between protesters and police officers. Thousands gathered in front of the Peruvian Congress to protest planned tax hikes. Police deployed tear gas against protesters, and some fires broke out in surrounding areas. The austerity policies planned by the Peruvian government got even more controversial as it was revealed that members of parliament used their tax-funded expenses for goods such as flowers, televisions, or iPads. Due to this, Peruvian Minister of Economy, David Tuesta, resigned on Monday. Now to Panama, where nearly 1 month after the end of the construction strike, workers are facing a negative backlash after winning a pay increase. The media and business groups have blamed the strike for the drop in the International Monetary Fund rating for the country from 5.6% to 4.6%. The industry is also trying to justify the increase of housing costs, when official numbers indicate that houses were already being sold for 10 times their price. The strike achieved a 14% increase for workers, something that, according to them, has generated resentment from industry managers. According to experts, the economic growth of Panama is not benefiting the workers nor the population.
We can see that locally, media outlets continue with their hate campaign against the triumph of the workers, and this is because they can still not comprehend the unity, discipline, and self-determination workers have had during this strike.
We go to Mexico, where teachers and school staff have rejected the government's education reform and are continuing demonstrations.
Teachers are continuing to protest against the education reform bill approved by Congress in 2013. Demonstrations started in the Mexican Stock Market building, which is considered a monument to neoliberal policies ordered from abroad. The members of the National Coordination Office for Education Workers are persisting with a strike that was called on June 4th to ask the government to open a new dialogue session.
There are more than 587 layoffs affecting people all over the country. Some of our comrades from the 22nd section of Oaxaca are in prison just for opposing government's policies.
Now, during the protest, they asked for resources to rebuild schools affected by the 2017 earthquakes. They are also demanding answers for the 43 missing Ayotzinapa students.
They have hiding and protecting some officials. We have already given names over. We want the technical secretary of the National Security Council, Tomás Cerón de Lucio, to be investigated, and also some other prosecutors that have lied to us.
The teachers' protests are taking place less than a month from the elections, when a new president, 500 Congress members, and 128 senators will be chosen.
The CNT has principles, and it's a high-quality national organization. We support political independence of parties, candidates, and governments, so we know that we have freedom for political militancy.
The only candidate that has met with them and that has promised institutional changes for education is Andrés Manuel López Obrador, who already has a 50-point lead over his competitors, according to the latest poll published in the newspaper El Diario Financiero.
The so-called education reform will be cancelled. We will use the government resources to stop labor and administrative damages against teachers.
Meanwhile, other competitors, such as candidates Ricardo Anaya and Jose Antonio Meade, praised the constitutional modifications to the 3rd and 73rd articles, even before they were approved, and stated that they will defend the reforms.
In Colombia, the killing of social leaders continues to rise. Over 200 social leaders and human rights defenders have been murdered in Colombia since January 2017. At least 8 activists have been murdered during the last week. Let's hear more about them.
On Tuesday, in the southern Valle del Cauca, former indigenous governor Amilcar Yigari was shot 4 times in his head and chest. In the same department, the bodies of the indigenous couple Pablo Emilio Dagua and Adriana Montero were found. They had disappeared on Saturday. On Friday, also in Valle del Cauca, teacher Del Mario Reyes was murdered. Reportedly, Reyes was trying to stop drug deals at his school. At the Northern Caribbean Department of Córdoba, indigenous leader Orlando Negrete and Julio Cesar Montalvo were killed. 7 community leaders have been killed in that area this year. Carlos Jimmy Prado Gallardo, social leader and human rights defender for the Afro-Colombians, Palenqueros, and Raizales communities, was murdered in the department of Nariño. Also, former FARC member Fradi Steve Rechica was killed in the Antioquia department.
Social organizations in Colombia asked the Constitutional Court to remove the ban that prevents human rights defenders from working with this special peace jurisdiction. More than 200 social organizations signed a document in which they also call for the full implementation of the peace agreement. Currently, the law prevents those who are members of human rights organizations or have accompanied a victim in legal actions from being appointed to the special jurisdiction for peace. This jurisdiction is a mechanism of transitional justice to prosecute participants in the Colombian armed conflict. It was created after the signing of the peace accords between the FARC and the Colombian government in 2016.
For the first time, we have a court in which 10% of the people in it belong to ethnic communities. For the first time, we have a court in which 50% of people are women. It is a court that has to demonstrate the spectrum of Colombian society, and also it has to be a court that reflects the sensitivity of the victim's situation of severe human rights violations.
We have been calling for the attention of authorities in the international community because what is lacking in Colombia is guarantees for social leaders and for those who have worked in the defense of peace.
In Barbados, Prime Minister Mia Mottley and her economic team met with a delegation from the International Monetary Fund, headed by Bert van Zelm, as the country contemplates entering an IMF program. The government also announced the appointment of British firm White Oak Advisory as its financial advisor in the debt restructuring process. It is expected that Barbados' credit ratings will shortly be adjusted down to selective default, as it is customary when debt restructurings are announced. During the opening of the parliament in Barbados on Tuesday, Governor General Sandra Mason read her government's plan for the country. She said they have 20 mission-critical items on their agenda with very little room for failure on any of them, with the economy being the most serious of all.
After extensive consultation over the last week with the social partners, my government has started the process of restructuring Barbados' public debt and renegotiating existing obligations. In so doing, it will seek the cooperation of its domestic and external creditors and the balance payments support of the International Monetary Fund. It will continue to consult extensively with the social partners in the development of our own comprehensive Barbados economic recovery and transformation plan.
3 Barbadians are coming together to bring a lawsuit that will challenge their country's sodomy laws. Activist Alexa Hoffman says they will challenge Section 9 of the Constitution, which deals with sodomy, and Section 12, which relates to serious indecency. She says too often these laws were used to harass the LGBTI community. The lawsuit will be launched on Wednesday at the law faculty of the University of the West Indies. This legal challenge follows the successful case brought before the Trinidad courts by activist Jason Jones that found the country's sodomy laws were unconstitutional. A video exhibition called The Walls of Chile is being presented in Santiago. The exhibition aims to give visitors a taste of prison life. The videos include projections that transform the facade of the building into a barbed wire and a replica of a cell, transporting the attendants into a Chilean prison. In Chile, the prison population is overwhelmingly under 34 years old, with 90% of prisoners having lived all their lives in poverty. Residents of the Honduran islands in the Gulf of Fonseca are getting ready to defy their government in its plan to evacuate them to transform the area into a zone for employment and economic development. The inhabitants defend their traditional way of life, which is now threatened by the government's project to build model cities and a zoo in an attempt to boost the national economy. Activists say the project violates the Honduras Constitution and the law for the protection of marine biodiversity. The plan is inspired by similar initiatives promoted in the past in Singapore and Korea. And after it sparked so much controversy, it is still unknown whether or not it will be carried out. We'll take one last short break, but join us again after another video from our multimedia team. Thanks for joining us again. Ahead of the World Cup in Russia, LGBTI soccer fans are worried about their safety in a country where legislation condemns homosexual propaganda and where cases of kidnapping and torture of homosexuals are prevalent. For that reason, the Russian LGBT Sports Federation is collaborating with the International Anti-Discrimination Organization to create diversity houses in Moscow and St. Petersburg during the World Cup. These are protected areas where LGBTI fans can gather to watch matches. They have also put out an advisory guide for LGBTI travelers planning to go to Russia during the World Cup. But it is yet to be seen if these initiatives will really convince fans to visit the country. In a historic announcement, Ethiopia has said it will fully accept and implement a peace agreement with Eritrea that was signed in 2000. It is considered a major step towards resolving one of post-colonial Africa's bloodiest and most prolonged conflicts. The neighbors fought a war from 1998 to 2000 over a border dispute which left about 80,000 people dead. Eritrea was a province of Ethiopia before winning its independence by referendum in 1993 with Ethiopian support. They signed a peace agreement in 2000, but the Ethiopians never accepted the findings of a boundary commission established by the agreement. The first batch of Cuban doctors to offer a wide range of medical services in Kenya has arrived in the capital city of Nairobi. A second batch of doctors will arrive on Thursday. In March, Kenya's Ministry of Health hired about 100 Cuban doctors to provide specialized health care in hospitals in faraway areas where a lack of skilled doctors forced patients to travel long distances. Kenya's doctor-to-patient ratio is 1 to 16,000 patients, far below a recommendation of the UN World Health Organization of 1 to 1,000. 50 Kenyan doctors are also set to travel to Cuba to undergo a 2-year postgraduate training. A blast at a mine in China has killed 11. Here's more on that and some other stories making headlines around the world.
A blast at an iron mine in Liaoning province northeast of China has killed at least 11 workers. The explosion also injured 9 miners and trapped others underground. 23 people were rescued but 2 are still missing. The accident happened after a truck carrying explosives blew up near the entrance of the mine. At least 7 people have been killed and 4 others injured by a group of machete-wielding attackers in Macomia, Mozambique. Local police have reported the presence of Islamic militants in the area. The army has confirmed 9 of the attackers have been killed. The attack comes a month after at least 10 people were beheaded in a village near the town of Palma in a similar fashion. The country has seen an increase in attack by militants since October.
Army forces are patient, and this is the action that we'll continue. As we are doing at this moment, we are communicating this in the field without limitations to catch the bandits, and it will be a continuous action until the last member of this group stops committing crimes, as we said here.
Tunisia's interior minister has fired 10 security officials amid an investigation into sinking of a boat carrying migrants that killed 112 of them. It was the deadliest shipwreck this year on the route from North Africa across the Mediterranean Sea to Europe. Most of the victims, who were from Tunisia and North Africa, were trying to reach Europe.
50 Latin American cartoonists are paying tribute to indigenous people in a traveling exhibition currently placed in the Argentine capital, Buenos Aires. Taco de Ojo Latinos Tunes recreates the stories of indigenous peoples in an attempt to reclaim their culture. These pages tell legends from the pre-Hispanic cultures in America, from Popol Vuh, the Mayan myth of the creation of the world, to the legend of Sapam Sucum, which explains the origin of the Atacama Desert. After being showed in Peru, Mexico and Argentina, the exhibition will move to Ecuador's capital, here in Quito. And with that, we come to the end of this news brief. But this and other stories, as you know, you can find on our website, telesurtv.net/English. And be sure to also follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.